Welcome to episode 223 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. Today, the 2026 World Cup kicks off. I'm so excited. And with you being here, it's likely that you are too. For the next 5 weeks, we'll be occupied by the biggest stage of the beautiful game. I can't wait. 3 countries, Canada, Mexico, and the United States are hosting, and 45 nations have qualified. So what better way to mark the opening of the 2026 World Cup with the origin of World Cup qualification? Well, actually any international qualification. It's June 11, 1933, Stockholm, the Olympic Stadium, Sweden against Estonia. And today, something happens that football has never really needed before. A match is played not to win a tournament, not to win a cup, not to win a championship, but simply to get into one. Sweden wins 6-2. This is the first World Cup qualifier. And more than that, it's effectively the first qualifying match for any major international football tournament. Before this, international tournaments had been things you entered, or were invited to, or belonged to by geography, empire, federation, or custom. Today, football invents the preliminary road, the long road, the road before the tournament. But how did we get here? International football begins simply enough. In 1872, Scotland and England play at Hamilton Crescent in Glasgow. Then comes the British Home Championship in the 1880s. England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, the first regular international football tournament. But there's no qualification. You're one of the home nations, or you are not. Then football enters the Olympic Games. By the 1900s, and especially from 1908 onward, Olympic football becomes increasingly important. In 1924 and 28, Uruguay used the Olympics to announce South America's arrival on the world stage. But again, no qualification in the modern sense. National teams enter. Committees accept entries. Politics, amateur rules, travel and money decide who is there. In South America, the Campeonato Sudamericano begins in 1916. What becomes the Copa America? Argentina, Brazil, Chile and Uruguay are the founding powers. No qualification. If you're in the circle, you play. In Central Europe, the International Cup begins in 1927, bringing together Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Italy, and Switzerland. It is one of the great pre-European Championship competitions. No qualifications. It is a league of invited or participating powers. Elsewhere, the same pattern appears. The Balkan Cup, the Baltic Cup, the Nordic Championship, the Far Eastern Championship Games. All serious in their own worlds, all important. All evidence that international football is spreading, but none of them yet creates the problem that will define the World Cup. Too many nations wanting to play in one final tournament. That is the real invention. In 1930, the first World Cup in Uruguay does not need qualifying. FIFA invites 16 nations, and 13 come. The British home nations stay outside FIFA. Many Europeans decline the long voyage. Uruguay host, win, and prove that the World Cup can matter. But the tournament is still experimental. Then the World Cup returns to Europe. The 1934 tournament is awarded to Italy. And suddenly, the demand is different. 32 countries enter for 16 places. And now FIFA has a mathematical problem, a logistical problem, and a political problem. You can't simply invite everyone. You can't stage a 32-team finals tournament in Italy in 1934. So you need filters. You need preliminary rounds. You need qualification. There's no fully standardized modern system yet. What survives from the format tells us what FIFA cared about most: geography, travel, cost, and getting the strongest workable field to Italy. The teams are divided into 12 groups. Groups 1 to 8 are European, with 12 final places for 21 teams. Groups 9, 10, and 11 cover the Americas, with 3 places for 8 teams. Group 12 covers Africa and Asia with 1 place. The groups don't all work the same way. Some are home and away ties. Some are small groups. Some have 2 qualifying spots. The American section is multi-stage. Haiti and Cuba 3 times in Haiti, then Mexico and Cuba 3 times in Mexico. Then the United States against Mexico in a one-off match in Rome 3 days before the World Cup begins. This is not yet elegant. It's improvised. But it's the beginning of a system. And as we discussed in episode 145, Italy themselves have to qualify. The hosts beat Greece 4-0 in Milan, and Greece withdraw before the return leg. It remains the only World Cup where the host had to qualify for its own tournament. That oddity tells you how new the rules still were. So on June 11, 1933, the whole thing starts in Stockholm. Sweden and Estonia are in Group 1 with Lithuania. Sweden are the established side. Their football association had been founded in the early 20th century. They had Olympic pedigree and had already become a serious Nordic football nation. The 1912 Olympic Stadium in Stockholm is a fitting stage, built for one global sports festival, now hosting the start of another global football tradition. Estonia are a younger football country, independent after the First World War, still building institutions, still finding their place in the Baltic and Nordic football worlds. But they are not anonymous. Their goalkeeper, Evald Tipner, becomes one of Estonia's great early sporting figures. The Baltic Cup gives Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania a competitive structure. This is a small football nation, yes, but a real one. The referee is Reidar Anders Johansen of Norway. Attendance, just over 8,000. And then the first whistle. 7 minutes in, Sweden score. History usually gives the goal to Knut Kroon. Some sources say it may have gone in off Tipner. Either way, this is the first goal in World Cup qualification history. 3 minutes later, Lennart Bunke scores, and 3 minutes after that, Bertil Eriksson makes it 3-0. 13 minutes played. Sweden are already 3 up. Just before halftime, Torsten Bunke makes it 4. Sweden 4, Estonia 0. Then Estonia answer. Leonhard Kaas scores 2 minutes after the restart, and Richard Kurema scores in the 61st minute. Now it's 4-2. For a moment, the first World Cup qualifier is not just an administrative milestone, it's a match. But then Sweden finish it. Bertil Eriksson scores again in the 70th minute, and Sven Andersson converts a penalty in the 79th. Final score, Sweden 6, Estonia 2. The first ever qualifier is high scoring, open, uneven, and absolutely decisive. A few weeks later, Sweden go to Kaunas and beat Lithuania 2-0. The Estonia-Lithuania match is not played because neither can now qualify. Sweden are through. And in Italy in 1934, they will even beat Argentina in the first round before losing to Germany in the quarterfinals. But all that comes later. On June 11, 1933, the main thing is simpler. The road to the World Cup has begun. But so what? They couldn't have known it, but Sweden and Estonia were pioneering one of football's greatest traditions. The World Cup finals are the visible summit. The qualifiers are the mountain range. For 1934, there were 27 qualifying matches and 141 goals. For 2026, the cycle has grown into a monster. 48 team finals, more than 200 eligible nations, and over 900 qualifying matches across 6 confederations. And across World Cup history, the qualifying tournament has become its own universe. More than 9,000 matches and more than 26,000 goals, and more heartbreak than the final tournament can possibly hold. That is the genius of qualification. It democratizes longing. Only a few teams can win the World Cup, but almost everyone can dream of reaching it. And qualifiers give football stories that the finals alone never could. I'm thinking here 5. First, England against Poland at Wembley in 1973. England need to win to reach the 1974 World Cup. Brian Clough calls Poland goalkeeper Jan Tomaszewski a clown. Then Tomaszewski plays the match of his life. England have chance after chance. Poland score through Jan Domarski. Alan Clark equalizes from the penalty spot. It ends 1-1. Poland go to the World Cup. England stay home. Second, Wales against Scotland in Cardiff in 1985. Scotland need a point to keep their Mexico 1986 dream alive. Mark Hughes gives Wales the leads. Davy Cooper equalizes from the penalty spot. Scotland get the result they need, but the night turns to grief when manager Jock Stein collapses and dies at Ninian Park. One of the most emotionally complicated qualifiers ever played. Success and mourning in the same breath. Third, Republic of Ireland against Spain, 1989. Jack Charlton's Ireland are still trying to reach their first World Cup. Spain arrive as the established power. A Michael own goal gives Ireland a 1-0 win at Lansdowne Road. Pat Bonner is immense in goal. The result becomes one of the stepping stones to Italia 90 and the beginning of Ireland's great World Cup romance. Fourth, France against Bulgaria in Paris in 1993. France need a point to qualify for USA 94. They have already blown one chance against Israel. Against Bulgaria, they lead through Cantona. Bulgaria come back. In the final seconds, David Ginola overhits a cross. Bulgaria break. Emil Kostadinov scores. France 1, Bulgaria 2. Bulgaria go to the World Cup and reach the semi-finals. France are destroyed. On that same day, there were other qualification dramas. Go back to episode 17 and listen. It's worth it. And fifth, Australia against Iran in Melbourne in 1997. Australia lead 2-0. They're on the edge of the World Cup. Then Iran score twice, 2-2. Iran qualify on away goals. Australia's drought continues until 2006. It is one of the great examples of qualification as cruelty. One stadium, one night, and one dream changing hands. I could listen dozens more. Honduras and El Salvador in 1969, which we covered 3 days ago. Costa Rica beating United States in the Snow Classico controversies wider CONCACAF world. Portugal against Sweden in 2013. Ronaldo against Ibrahimovic. Hat-trick against hat-trick energy. One superstar going to Brazil and the other staying home. Panama's 2017 night of chaos against Costa Rica when the country reaches its first World Cup. And Curaçao, qualifying for 2026, becoming the smallest nation ever to reach the men's World Cup finals. That is the breadth. Qualification is not a side quest. It is where most of the world experiences the World Cup, and it has its own great statistical theater. Cristiano Ronaldo becomes the all-time leading scorer in World Cup qualifying. Carlos Ruiz of Guatemala still sits near the top because qualifiers belong not only to superstars from champion nations, but to men who carried smaller football countries through long, grinding campaigns. Messi, Lewandowski, Ali Day, Suarez, Shevchenko, Harry Kane, Tim Cahill. The list is a history of global persistence. And yet the deepest meaning is not only in famous names. It is the first round in Oceania, the preliminary tie in Asia, the Caribbean island that gets one home match and fills the ground, the African team that travels through 3 rounds and still falls short, the European minnow that loses often but once every generation earns a draw that feels like a trophy. In 1933, qualification is a practical solution. By 2026, it is one of the largest recurring sporting competitions on Earth. And all of it begins with Sweden against Estonia. 8 goals in Stockholm. Sweden stepping onto the road to Italy. A stadium built for the Olympics, becoming the birthplace of World Cup qualifying. Before we go, 3 things to take away from June 11, 1933. First, qualification was not inevitable. Early international tournaments used invitations, entries, regional identity, and custom. The World Cup needed qualifiers only when demand exceeded capacity. Second, the 1934 system was improvised, regional, and uneven, but it worked. 32 entered, 16 places were available, and FIFA created the first road to the finals. Third, Sweden 6, Estonia 2 was more than a result. It was the first step in a tradition that now stretches across every confederation, thousands of matches, and almost every football nation on Earth. On this day in 1933, Sweden beat Estonia 6-2 at Stockholm Olympic Stadium in the first qualifying match in World Cup history, and football discovered that the journey to a tournament could become as dramatic, painful, and unforgettable as the tournament itself. That is all for episode 223 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. You can help this show a lot if you rate it 5 stars. It really helps push OTD up the charts and in front of new people. And of course, if you have an idea for the show, my email is otd@17lawsguy.com. Tomorrow, we go to June 12, 1938, the Battle of Bordeaux, Brazil against Czechoslovakia, a World Cup quarterfinal so violent it needed a replay. See you then.